Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. I welcome you all once again to this webinar hosted by Lawcubator on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Myself, Ipsita Mishra. I am a senior in-house counsel at Lawcubator. I have my colleague Ruchira Banerjee with me, who will help me facilitate the slides. So what are the learning objectives? What will we basically learn from this webinar? We will try and understand different concepts like diversity, equity, inclusion, and few other concepts at workplace. We will also try and identify different types of discrimination, common unconscious biases, stereotypes or judgments that we have at workplace. We will try and tackle this D&I concerns and also try to bridge the gap at the workplace. We'll use a set of best practices to develop an inclusive and empowered workplace, and also try to see how we can institutionalize the process. Now, I would like you all to just take some moment and I'll give you a scenario basically to visualize. So for example, I'll just give you a scenario. You have booked a cab to head towards your office and the cab driver arrives in 15 minutes. You strike up a casual conversation with the driver during the ride. Eventually, the driver drops you off at the destination, also smiles at you and asks you to give a 5-star rating. So now, when you visualize this scenario, is the driver a male driver or a female driver? I'd like you all to use the chat box to reply. So we have one answer from Srimoy Avila that it's male. Okay. Any other responses? Any other apart from male? Did you visualize that the driver was a female driver? Okay. So as we see that most of us visualize that the driver was a male. So now coming to another scenario, let us have another scenario. So now we have a project basically, and the project manager has a new interesting project, which is a very tech-savvy project. This tech-savvy project involves a lot of technology and design, and she requires someone who has lots of efficiency also. Now, the interesting part of the project is she has two members, basically, two employees from whom she needs to choose. One employee is 29 years old, while another employee is 56 years old. And neither of them have a background in technology or design. I hope the scenario was clear. Please let me know if the scenario was not clear. I can repeat again. So this was a project which is very tech savvy, and it involves a lot of technology and design. And there are two options for the project manager because she wants to choose one person as the team leader. One option is an employee who is 29 years old, and another is an employee who is 56 years old. And none of them have a background in technology or design. Who do you think the project manager chose as the team leader for this project? Please, you can use the chat box again for the response. I'd like all to mention the age, like which employee. Was it the 29-year-old employee or was it the 56 years old employee? Okay, so most of us feel that it is a 29-year-old employee. So from these two scenarios which I gave you, in the first scenario, we saw that most of us assumed that the driver was a male driver. This is a common gender stereotype that all of us have. We feel that women cannot make good drivers, or maybe it is because of the fact that we mostly come across drivers who are male. In the second scenario, we saw that the project manager selected, or at least most of us thought that it was the younger colleague who was chosen. Nobody said this to us, but it is from our unconscious biases and the stereotypes that we have these discriminations ingrained deep inside our brain. That even if a situation comes up, we think it is a younger person who is more adaptable towards technology and can handle the project better. So what we need to do is we need to recognize these challenges basically and the biases basically, which will help us have a fair and inclusive workplace. Now, moving on to next slide, we will show you a video now.
A truly diverse and inclusive workplace allows its employees to bring to the table a large pool of ideas and experiences, which in turn leads to a positive impact over the overall organizational performance. It results in higher productivity of employees and profit to the organization. However, a diverse workforce comes with its own set of challenges, more often apparent only when put into practice. Let's explore one such incident for better understanding. Shalini, an energetic and cheerful woman, was a market researcher of a well-renowned company. While extremely professional at work, she was especially popular amongst her colleagues owing to her wit and charm. Despite having a stammer when she spoke, the quality of the work delivered by her was never hampered. On one occasion, where all the company heads, including the board of directors, were supposed to meet and discuss the business strategy for the next 2 quarters, Shalini was to present a particular strategy proposal on behalf of her team. This decision was taken by Shalini's line manager, who thought Shalini would be an apt person for this. The whole team was excited and happy for her since she was absolutely deserving of this opportunity. Unfortunately, just a day prior to the big presentation, a senior manager approached Shalini and informed her that Rahul, another team member, would be making the presentation in her stead. The manager bluntly cited Shalini's stammer as the reason for this last-minute change, claiming that it would lead to embarrassment and test of patience of the company heads. This action was clearly less than favorable. In fact, it was discriminatory to not allow Shalini to present in front of the heads because of her speech disability. So, what did we learn here?
I would like you all to again use your chat box and give responses to this question basically. From this scenario or the story that we just saw, what basically did we learn here? We can just reply in one sentence. Any responses? What exactly did we learn here? Shrimoy is saying it's a disability-based discrimination, but apart from Shrimoy, any other responses? Any other, like just one word or 2 words is also fine. What exactly, what kind of discrimination was this? Or what are exactly our roles when we find this kind of discrimination at workplace? Please feel free to just write 1-2 answers also, that's fine. This is just an interactive webinar. Let's see, what do you have in mind? What exactly did we learn here? We basically saw here, Shimoy was right, that this is a disability-based discrimination. Here, the candidate, even though she was very meritorious and capable, she was not given the project only on the basis of her stammering. We need to realize that stammering is recognized as a disability. Employees should ensure that employees who stammer basically or have any form of disability, they're not subjected to any form of discrimination. In fact, such kind of employees, they should be provided full support and any form of reasonable accommodation that is required to them so that they can work fully, properly, and to the full of potential at the workplace. This will also give them confidence and give a feeling of belongingness to the team, and they can use their full potential to the fullest at the workplace. Now let us watch another video.
Rebecca is the newest member of a tech firm in Bangalore. She is a sharp and well-spoken woman from the Northeast, but has a different accent than her teammates who are all from southern Indian states. They often make jokes about the way she speaks, calling her names in jest. One day, after a team meeting, Ashmita, one of Rebecca's teammates, started imitating her and everyone present had a good laugh. Rebecca was humiliated and angry. She even stood up for herself and requested everyone to stop making fun of her. She specifically requested them to refrain from harassing her any further. Much to her dismay, the situation got worse when her teammates stopped talking and interacting with her at all. The very idea to go to the office and work with her teammates became more distressing for Rebecca with each passing day. This is workplace bullying.
So any idea, you can use the chat box again to give what according to you is workplace bullying. So the question is basically, in this video, we saw, Vivek, we saw that there is a person who is basically coming from a different cultural background, and she was being discriminated here. And that is the reason we wanted to understand she's being bullied basically. So the question is, what exactly is workplace bullying? She has a different accent, and people in her colleagues in her office are making fun of her. In fact, there was time when people did not even try relating to her or sitting near her or mixing with her. So, according to you, what exactly is workplace bullying? Okay, Rajesh says it is social isolation, targeting an individual. Okay, any other definitions for workplace bullying? Vivek says any unwelcome act making the person uncomfortable. Discrimination. Okay. So we see they have diverse responses here, different responses from different people. So basically the definition of workplace bullying is something when we try to mistreat an individual repeatedly for a longer period of time. This can be of any form of bullying. It can be emotional abuse, it can be verbal. However, it should cause some conflict and pain to the person, basically the victim. So we should try and understand that we all have regional accents given the diverse nature of a country. We all come from different backgrounds, from different states, and all our accents are different. Because we have a lot of dialects also. But this basically should not be a reason to bully, discriminate, form any form of judgments or biases, or form any form of stereotypes. So in the last two videos and the two scenarios beforehand, we saw there are different kinds of biases, judgments, and stereotypes that we have. Including that, moving on to the next slide, we see that there are many stereotypes also. Stereotypes can be of different types. For example, an employee basically who is holding a degree from an international university is considered more competent and meritorious or intelligent compared to an employee who holds a degree from an Indian college. Similarly, employers feel a working mother who has a child basically is not devoted towards the work. At the same time, the woman might be facing discrimination at her home that she's not a good mother also. Or the office people might be feeling that she's not contributing towards her work. Colorism or shadism is a concept in India where basically we feel that the lighter skin, or specifically when it relates to women, that fair women are considered more beautiful or have more standards of beauty compared to a darker skinned women who we feel are less desirable. On the other hand, we have this concept for men that tall, dark men are considered handsome. Also, we feel that only high salary will make employees happy, and the list will goes on and on. So stereotypes basically are this inaccurate beliefs that is based on characteristics like age, culture, sex, gender, socio-economic background. It can be anything. And these stereotypes can lead us to prejudice and discrimination as they tend to have generalized notions and they fail to recognize the individuality and diversity within groups or within an organization. Now, moving forward to next slide, we will try and discuss few important concepts. So the first important concept is that of diversity. When we are coming to a workplace, we all come from diverse backgrounds, irrespective of the sex, gender, age, socio-economic background, race. Our educational backgrounds are different, our family backgrounds are different. So diversity is basically when we recognize our individual differences and we need to understand that we all differ from each other. On the other hand, equity is something when we try and recognize the individual and the unique characteristics that an individual requires, and we provide reasonable accommodation or all the support so that they can carry out the work properly. I'll give you a few examples again how we will differentiate between that. Now, inclusion is something, these are the actions that makes everyone feel included in a group. They feel respected and welcomed basically, that all individuals matter. While belonging is the intersection of all this, that the employee feels that they're a part of the group actually. Now, for example, let us take a scenario. There is a meeting that is going on, and the manager invites everyone to the conference hall for the meeting. There is a team member who has slight visual impairment. Now the manager arranges an alternative control. For example, they are sharing a PPT that needs to be discussed in the conference hall. The manager arranges an alternative controller that uses a software app so that the PPT can have also sound, so that a visually impaired person can understand and also align with the meeting. And also the PPT has dark colors for the visually impaired person. Next, the manager gives all the team members who are in the meeting a chance to speak and present their viewpoints and suggestions. At the end, when the employees make their viewpoints, the manager acknowledges that everyone's suggestion will be taken care of and incorporated. So when in this example, when the manager invites everyone to the meeting, irrespective of their background or age, sex, gender, that is what is diversity all about. Second thing is when the manager gave that visually impaired person special accommodation, that is special reasonable accommodation, so that the visually impaired person can feel a part of the group, that is what is called equity. Because seeing the unique circumstances of an individual, those accommodations or full support is given. I might not require that support, but a person who is disabled or visually impaired, they cannot read the PPT, or they can't. So if the colors are really bright, it helps them to see that. So this is the form of equity. So inclusion is something when the manager gives all the team members the chance to speak and present their viewpoints. And at the end, when all the team members in the meeting, their suggestions are incorporated, that they feel that they are an important part of the group or their voice is being heard, that is what is in belonging is all about. So these are the few important concepts regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is an intersection of all these things. Moving forward, we will discuss few other concepts. So as the name suggests, microaggressions, these are very small in nature. Aggressions are something which is hostile and derogatory basically. This can be intentional as well as unintentional, but these are so small and brief that it takes place in a workplace also and in a day-to-day life. We do not even realize that this can be derogatory or negative. These are basically insults towards the marginalized groups of people. So, for example, a colleague is commenting that you're too pretty for a dark-skinned girl, or some other comments like it's almost impossible for him to play any sport with that height. So this is what a height discrimination is. In fact, statistics shows that an average male CEO is 3 inches taller than the average male. Also, we can comment on the accent, like being a Bihari, you speak such good English or you have such good English accent. So these are few forms of microaggressions that we face in our day-to-day workplace. Any other microaggressions that you could think of, you can use the chat box to reply for that. Any other microaggressions which you feel that we use in a day-to-day workplace? Any response regarding any form of microaggressions that we face? Commenting on height and weight. True. Apart from height and weight discrimination. So this is true. We have many microaggressions which we don't even realize. It can be anything starting from the height, weight, age, or the food preferences that a person have. For example, a person from South India is moving towards North India. So colleagues can comment on the kind of food preferences these people have, or the accent they have, or maybe stereotyping behavior of a region also. There's a few microaggressions which we don't really, okay, this person is from Delhi, so she's behaving like a Delite. So there's a few microaggressions we need to realize that these are discriminatory and these are basically negative slights and insults to the people. Moving forward to unconscious bias. Unconscious bias, these are basically unintentional only. This is also called as implicit bias. These are our ability to generate unfair attitudes or behaviors towards others. This affects our behaviors and our decisions also, and we don't even realize these are biases. And this can potentially lead to unfair treatment and discrimination. Moving forward, we will discuss some unconscious biases at workplace. Moving forward to the next slide. Yeah. So when we see this resume, we can see the first resume here. When we are seeing, there is a halo effect. So the HR, when the HR is going through the resume, we tend to see that there is a halo effect where we see that the candidate has worked in Google. So we think that the HR thinks that, okay, this person has worked in Google, so that candidate must be like very great, like they must be a very strong candidate or must be very intelligent. So halo effect is something when we tend to think that something is, we tend to think very highly of an individual, and we tend to see everything positive about them. If someone is beautiful, we tend to think that person must be having great social skills or great speaking skills. We probably also think that they're very intelligent and charismatic. Coming to confirmation bias is something when we believe that we have already made a decision about something, and then we actively look for information that supports that decision. However, we can also overlook any negative viewpoints if we get, or any opposing viewpoints. So in this resume, if we see, the HR sees that the person has worked in Google, but we also found that the person has worked only for 3 months, which is a negative thing. So we are just trying to confirm our decision to the decision that is already made, that he has worked in Google. So no doubt that person must be a great candidate. There must be some reason why did he leave. So we are just trying to confirm to the decision that we have already made. Affinity bias is something where we tend to see people basically where we are affiliated with a person who are similar to ourselves. It can be anything, like for example, someone, and here we see this person has completed the course on the Prince Foundation. Basically, the HR herself has also completed the Prince Foundation course, and the candidate also has completed. So we tend to see that, okay, since this foundation was very difficult to clear, maybe this person is a great candidate. Or maybe, for example, an HR is taking an interview and there were multiple candidates, and the HR narrowed down to two candidates. At the end, both the candidates were very meritorious. The interviews went really well, and but however, the HR went narrowed down to that candidate who belonged to the same engineering college and to her hometown. So this is what an affinity bias is all about. When it comes to groupthink is basically a herd mentality. Like whatever the group or my team member says or my project manager says, I'll just go forward with it. And we don't tend to question them. Stereotype bias, as we discussed in this resume, if you see, we are seeing that the candidate belongs to Cambridge University. So we again think, or maybe this person belongs to an elite university like IIT Bombay compared to a private engineering college. So we have this bias that this person must be great. At the same time, we see in this resume, we are seeing at the age of this person, of the candidate. And sometimes we'll feel that, okay, this person is too old for this role. So there's a few kinds of biases. As hiring managers, we don't even know that these are the biases. These are deeply ingrained. And when we are recruiting someone, this biases is just reflects on our decision making. Moving forward to the next slide, we will discuss few other unconscious biases. For example, authority bias. Authority bias is something, it is basically an idea and opinion, and we tend to give it more attention or thought only because it is coming from an authority figure. So for example, my CEO has a plan of a expansion, which is very risky, but without any question, we tend to accept it despite the flaws. Or maybe the project manager is setting some projects deadlines, which is very unrealistic. And all of the team members, they know it, that this is not realistic, but we tend to accept it only because it is coming from an authority figure, that is the project manager, and we don't tend to question it. When it comes to gender bias, it is basically an unequal treatment which is based on the gender of the individual, and this results in discrimination. For example, one point is put forward by a woman, and she is considered very aggressive. But if the same point is put forward by a man, he is considered very confident. On the other hand, we feel that a male member who is very soft and gentle speaking, we consider that that person is not capable enough of taking leadership roles. So there are various kinds of biases, including beauty biases, where people believe that attractive people are more competent, intelligent, or have better social skills. So, for example, a candidate, Radhika, she applied for a front desk job, and her interview went really well, and she was expecting a call back. She also got a confirmation call, but she did not get the job of a front desk employee, but that of a back desk employee. So, and this role went to someone who was very fair skinned and beautiful. So, this shows different kinds of biases that we have. Can you think of any other biases that we have apart from the biases that we discussed? Can you think of any other biases that we have at a workplace? Please feel free. Please let's. This is an interactive webinar. Let's have it more and be more interactive and reply to this thing. Any other biases that you can think of? Like as Vishu mentioned, there can be a weight bias, there can be a height bias. What else as HRs or as employees, what do you think? What are the other form of unconscious biases that we have? Ethnicity, personal biases also we have. Okay, so as we see, when we are hiring as hiring managers, if nowadays we have online interviews, but most of the times when we have a front to front interviews, as HRs, we also tend to see the non-verbal clues that the candidate is sending. For example, the candidate is unable to make eye contact or is folding in the hands and sitting. Then this non-verbal cues, we take it as maybe overconfidence or disinterest or lack of confidence, and we also tend to judge the candidates based on this non-verbal bias also. So biases also can be non-verbal, or maybe sometimes we feel the person is too overconfident also. That is also important. Now, moving forward to the next slide, we will see how few companies have included their D&I programs to a great level, and we will discuss what has really worked for them. When it comes to IBM, basically, IBM provides a 3 to 6 weeks of language and culture immersion program for employees before they are deployed throughout the country. This gives the employees basically a chance to understand the language and culture of the place where they are being placed or where they will work for the next few months. So this is a great way of understanding diversity and being inclusive also. IBM also has a reverse mentoring project. It is basically a voluntary program which brings the senior level manager and an internal LGBT alliance member. So the objective here is very clear: to increase the LGBT awareness and also to contribute to discussions regarding the career growth of the LGBT member within the firm, and also try to understand what are the challenges they are facing or what are their achievements, and to make them feel inclusive. In fact, Tata Steel back in 2020 itself was recognized as the top employer for LGBT plus inclusion by India Workplace Equality Index. They also have a D&I program that ensures equal opportunity hiring for all. So it is not only about the private companies, but also government entities like SEBI. They state that all listed companies should have at least one female director as a part of their board. And this has in fact led to a substantial increase of 8% in the number of women directors on the board in the past 5 years. In fact, Nestle was also ranked fourth by Bloomberg Gender Equality Index for the fourth consecutive term in 2022, and women have 43.9% of managerial positions. Nestle also provides a gender neutral global parental support policy where, irrespective of gender, they provide offer parental leave policies. As we saw, these are few of the good practices, and they being inclusive, they have also realized that how this can lead to performance growth in performance of the employees also, being diverse, being inclusive, and having this diversity programs also. Moving on to next slide, we will see few data points how it has really helped. So, for example, McKinsey states that gender diverse companies are 15% more likely to outperform their peers. Same goes for, they also say that for ethnically diverse companies, they are 35% more likely to do the same. Deloitte states that in diverse workplaces, they are 30% more likely to recognize any mistakes that they have. So, and they spot on prior hand and they fix it before it becomes too big to handle. So it's naturally that if we have a diverse team, we will have different perspectives and viewpoints, and we tend to spot on the mistakes very early. So these are few data points which states that how basically we should have being diverse and inclusive and equitable, it increases the performance of the employees and also helps in innovation of the company. Now, moving forward, let's see what we as companies we can do. How can we increase basically involve or improve on our diversity, inclusion, and equity? First and foremost thing that is important is we need to realign our company policies to meet the minimum standards of diversity and inclusion. So our commitment towards diversity should be very clear, and we should be transparent about this to our colleagues or employees or the clients basically that we plan to do this. So we need to realize that there is no specific law for diversity, equity, and inclusion. There is law for like Right of People for Disabilities Act, or maybe extending the maternity act, or maybe for women we have different issues, or maybe for LGBT also law we have, but we don't really have specific law for DE&I. So we need to look at more. Also, there is no specific definition for inclusion, diversity, or equity. So we need to see the definitions, like how different organizations are doing, and we need to realign our company policies to meet the minimum standards of diversity and inclusion. The next thing that we need to do it when we are making this kind of policies, we need to consider taking help from an external expert who will help us set these goals and policies for help. So that will be of immense help because we can take some expert guidance from them. Next, we can go, we should see that the top executive of the company or organization, they're taking the responsibility for leading and sponsoring this DNI sessions. So once the top executive is taking the responsibility, there will be a cascading effect or a trickling effect towards all the employees, and all the employees will take equal accountability for the same, and it will reflect in the organization also. Next thing is training is very important. Training not only at one particular level, but in all levels, and on topics like unconscious biases, or maybe the best practices, or gender pronoun training. For example, we know for gender we use he or she. That is what we have been taught in schools. But we also need to see that he, she, they, them, their. Do we really understand what do they mean? So those gender pronoun trainings are very important. And also training should be held regularly and not once in a blue moon. That is important. Like how frequently the trainings are being held. When it comes to surveys and feedbacks, we need to carry out surveys and feedbacks from employees to understand if the employee feels a part of the group. We need to ask open-ended questions like and have open dialogues with the employees. Basically, how included do they feel? Or maybe in team meetings, employees might be having certain thought process, but they're unable to express it, fearing that the authority or the project manager might not be liking it, or maybe they might be having certain other informal groups like outside the team meeting they're discussing with their employees, and they don't feel comfortable raising those difficult issues. So we need to see that in team meetings, do the employees feel comfortable discussing, or maybe if they're not in agreement with the project manager or with the top level person, are they expressing their disagreement clearly, or is there anything which is blocking them from performing better? So those all things, open-ended questions should be there in the surveys and feedback from the employees to understand that what are the problems they are facing. Also, when it comes to redressal mechanism, we need to try and understand that, for example, there is a sexual harassment case. An employee can go to the internal committee and complain. But when it comes to issues like diversity and inclusion, we don't know whom we should complain. Is it the project manager? Is it the HR that we need to complain? So having that proper process is very important, that the redressal mechanisms should be there, so that a process, how are the complaints being held, basically what is the process, what is the time limit for this, that is important. Now having a scorecard is important. It will help us in monitoring and evaluation, and have metrics for recruiting, for promotion levels, for turnover rates, and compensation levels also. The next thing, that innovative thing that we can have is inclusive culture. So we need to see work culture is very important. Again, there is no definition for work culture. Work culture, it becomes extremely important. But there are times when we feel that the HR, being as HRs, we have rejected candidates. I'm sure people must have rejected candidates on the basis that they are not a good cultural fit. So is there any definition for cultural fit? As HRs, we need to see that. Like, do you have any criteria for what exactly is a cultural fit, or is there any definition for cultural fit? And even if we have certain criteria, are these criteria inclusionary? So that is important, which will help us promote openness also, and tackle any form of microaggressions. We can also have like culture celebration calendar. Maybe we might not be having holidays. Like, are we celebrating Christmas? Do we have are we celebrating Parsi New Year, or maybe celebrating Eid? So we can have this cultural celebration calendar also, which will promote openness and tackle any form of microaggressions. When it comes to diverse form of interview techniques and formats, few things we need to see, that we need to expand the hiring pool also. Like we can remove the candidate when we are hiring. We can have an app that removes the name or the photo of a person, so that there is no discrimination here. Or maybe we can also check there are companies basically which have like companies like EY and Google. They have seen that in their for the entry level hiring, they have removed the college history and the salary history. This they have done owing to the fact that they have realized maybe the salary history or the college degree history. This has nothing to do with the skills that is required at the job place. So that is important. Or having anonymous resumes is very important. Or maybe when we are asking for references or referrals, it should be a diverse form of referrals. So there's a few. This is not basically a checklist. There's a few ways that way how we can improvise our diversity and inclusion. Apart from this pointers that we have mentioned on the slide, do you think any other ways that we can like improve the diversity and inclusion at workplace? Any other way? Please feel free to use the chat box to reply. Any other ways which you think we should have? Survey, yes. So survey is important. As we discussed earlier, like carrying out surveys and feedbacks from employees is important. What other things we can have apart from survey? Any other responses? Measuring emotional EQ. Yes, that is a good point that we could have. So apart from this, few other things as hiring managers that we can see is we need to focus on having social class transitioners. For example, naturally we see elite companies, they tend to hire people from privileged backgrounds. Whether they mean it to or not, that is a different thing. But this could negatively affect the performance. So when there are social class transitioners, these are basically people who belong to different socio-economic classes. And the best thing about this class of people is they have lived towards different lifetimes and they bring unique and valuable qualities to the workplace. Like they can interact very good with people, they connect with people with various categories of diversity, and they also enable the flow of information amongst group members, or they're very good at resolving the conflicts also because they're so adaptable and adjusting. So having people from different classes is also very important. Also, we could have few like employee networks. For example, when we are having meetings, maybe in front of the project manager or HR, the employee is not comfortable enough to share what the problems they are facing. So employee networks are basically voluntary groups where the employees can basically discuss. They can come from different backgrounds, like again, different age, different sex, different socioeconomic class, and they can themselves discuss what are the problems they are facing. Like rather than having this meeting every time with the HR or the manager. So this voluntary groups will help them to discuss the issues they are facing, and then we can recognize that, okay, I might be facing the same thing, some other colleague can also be facing the same thing. So having employee networks is a good way. This is although a voluntary mechanism. Also, having a way of partner mentoring is important. Like for example, in the initial video we saw that a person, this scenario which we had, the project went to a person who is 29 years old. So we already have a bias in this thing, like people who are young, they are good with technology. So when we have a partner mentoring is basically when you are allotted to a team where a young person and a person who is like older to you, they're in the same group. So this is from different generation basically. So in this sense, you will be able to understand the perspective what the different generation person is bringing. Maybe if I'm 29 years, I'll try to understand the wisdom that the older generation person brings, or maybe the older generation person will try to understand the technology or the effectiveness or the efficiency or other soft skills that they bring to the table. So this partner mentoring is very important also. Apart from that, any form of awareness, discussions and sensitization programs is very important. This will help us to basically equip, enhance, and empower policies, processes, and structure at a workplace. Moving on to next slide. So we have a set of questions here, and whether you are a part of the HR team or it's a leader or any employer, let us begin by accessing the current state of our organization. So here we will just see, these are 10 questions. I would like you just to take some 3-4 minutes to go through the questions in detail and just identify the gaps. You just need to prioritize the top 3. Just mention the numbers in the chat box, which according to you are the top 3 that you should have in your policy or in your organization basically. And according to you, it has the most impact, or it will also give a clear signal to the clients or other people that you're very committed towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it will also bring it will give a clear message basically. So I repeat the question again. Just go through the 10 questions in the slide, and you can use the chat box to mention the top 3 priority. Just mention the number which you think is most important. You can just take 2-3 minutes for the same and mention the priority list 1, 2, 3, like whichever is 1, 2, 3. So according to Shimo, it is like having a designated person who is accountable, gender balance is ensured, and feedback is sought from relevant people. Any other responses? 3, 4. So Suhasini says it is basically diverse group of employees to various religions and gender balance, and people have the basic. So now also when we see, we have diverse opinions here also, like what might be maybe if what might be important for me might not be important to you. So we have different diverse opinions and objects perspectives here. Vishu says, according to Vishu, it is like different religion and communities, and equal pay for equal work, and needs of employees with disabilities. So yes, so Poojan also has different answers for the same. Apart from this is not a checklist. This is a sample basically. But apart from this, do you think anything else that needs to be there? You can mention that also. What do you think is missing in this list? Anything that you can think of. Just take 2-3 minutes, ponder over it, and then you can reply. Gender neutral washrooms. Yes. So that will be automatically actually incorporated, Vishu, in point number 10, where you're meeting the needs of the employees with disabilities. So you have gender need. Oh, sorry. This is gender neutral washrooms. Okay, got it. For LGBT inclusive. Okay. Anything else? Yes, so this is a great idea of having regular ice-breaking sessions through games and fun activities, which is a good thing we have in our organization regularly. Suhasini says that we need to have policies to support other gender at workplace also. True. So as mentioned, this is not a checklist. There are many other things that we need to look what other organizations are doing. As mentioned, like there is no proper law for DNI. We need to figure out, in fact, it comes all from our experiences, like what exactly are we facing, what problems are the employees facing. So in only with regular communication this will be possible. Like what problem with the surveys basically is very important, like what are the problems they are facing. So basically, actually, do you remember a time when, most of us when we're new to jobs, when we used to pre-COVID, when we used to go to office regularly, or maybe a person who has joined a job for the first time, there were times when most of us must have felt, or many must have felt cornered at workplace. Like we did not feel included in the team, or maybe people did not have lunch with us, or we did not we were not able to gel up. People, there might be candidates or employees, who are not very outgoing. So it was very difficult for them to gel up also. So this kind, or maybe someone who is disabled and they don't feel included, you don't go and talk to them, or maybe someone who is very beautiful, we tend to get attracted towards them, or someone who has great speaking skills, we believe, okay, that person is worth talking to. There might be a candidate who is very entertaining or very jovial, so we feel that person is important. Or maybe we have this bias that, okay, this person is from different caste, I don't want to mix with that person. So then all of us must have gone through some or the other discrimination, bias, stereotypes, and judgments. And so all of us remember those, at least one incident must have obviously happened. And this gives rise to feeling of isolation, loneliness, emotional conflict, and a lot of pain. And we, even if we realize or not, this can affect the productivity at the workplace, and it can affect your performance also. So the first and foremost thing that we need to do is, even if we are facing any form of bias, judgments, or stereotypes, we need to speak up. If I'm a witness, if I'm a victim, or if I'm a witness, I need to speak up that this is a wrong thing that is happening. Second thing, we need to make a conscious effort to change our attitudes and beliefs also. There might be times when I don't realize that I'm having a bias. So we need to be aware at least for this trainings is very important. Like any form of training which makes me aware at least that this is a bias that I'm already having. So we need to make conscious effort to change our attitudes towards this. So once we start from ourselves, it will also affect our colleagues also. And also it will impact our hiring, our promotion levels, our compensation, and our turnovers also. So this is important. Any other questions? So this is the end of the webinar basically. Please feel free to ask any questions if you have. Any questions that anybody has regarding this webinar? No, so the policy is not mandatory as such. There is no policy as such. We need to see it is a good practice that we need to develop. So again, how to develop a committee for DI? It is an internal call that the team needs to take. There is no policy as such. We need to see the best practices. What are the other organizations having? And then we need to form it. How should team members be prepared ever if you hire a person with disability in a team? For this, Suhasini, we need to have regular trainings and we need to have an external expert who would give us advice on how to have basically for disability people, like we need to go through the 2016 Act, that is the right to protection for people with disabilities. There are several things that are mentioned in the Act itself that what should be there in the workplace. Maybe for a person who is unable to walk properly, disability, they need to have the ramps, whether we have ramps. The physical infrastructure as employees we can't take, that is the management's role, the physical infrastructure. But apart from that, we need to have regular trainings to be sensitive towards this differently abled people. Any other questions anybody has? As of now, yes. Like if I'm facing any issue here, like I can go to my project manager HR, because that is a reason. Any redressal mechanism, we need to have a proper process. Like that is an internal call that we need to take. The HR can also take up. As of now, we can take up, but we need to have. We need to discuss how we need to have that. Is it a mandate to hire a percentage of as people with disabilities? I guess that is like 3%, if I'm not wrong. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Swasi. So I think we're towards the end of the webinar. And thank you all for joining this webinar. We'd also like to inform you that the videos that you watched at the starting of the webinar, it was from our course module on diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you'd like to have a demo, please feel free to write back to us. Thank you all and have a very wonderful evening. Thank you.